Could the Heat make a blockbuster trade before the season involving Tyler Herro? This is the Heat Report by Chat Sports. That is the topic today. And more specifically, could it be a trade to the Detroit Pistons? And before we get really into the trade idea, I want to talk about, does a Hero trade make sense? And I mostly lean no, but if you are a person or if the organization is hesitant slash not going to offer him an extension worth $40 million per season on an annual average basis, you should absolutely look to trade him. He is coming off of the best season of his career, so his trade value is at the highest it could possibly be at right now, and he still has 2 more years under contract this season and the next. So if you do not want to extend him and pay him top end money, you should absolutely look to cash in on his value being at the highest right now. And if there is a team that could potentially look to make a Hero blockbuster trade, it is most likely going to be the Detroit Pistons. Why do I say that? They desperately need scoring in that backcourt next to Cade Cunningham. They have a couple young players and an expiring contract that makes sense to make salaries work. And it is a team that could fit on the same timeline as adding Tyler Herro. So if you're looking for a team out there that makes sense for a Hero trade, the Pistons are the clear-cut number one option. I always had the Orlando Magic as number 2, but ever since the Desmond Bane trade, that is unlikely. And we're going to look at what trade idea came in from Bleacher Report here, and let's start the video right now. Before we get into the trade idea from Bleacher Report, make sure you follow me on Twitter at Nick_Roloff for daily updates around Miami Heat basketball. We're on the road to 3,000 followers. Let's get there for Mr. 3 himself, Dwayne Wade, but appreciate everybody for watching today's show. And I do want to make this clear that this trade idea and overall topic is coming in from Bleacher Report, so I just am merely reacting to it, but I do see how it makes sense for both squads if the compensation each way makes sense. And here is the trade that was thrown out there by Zach Buckley over at Bleacher Report. The Heat get Ron Holland, the top 5 pick from last year. Was he top 5? Yeah, he was top 5, 2024. Tobias Harris, and then 3 first-rounders, a lottery-protected pick in 2026, an unprotected pick in 2030, plus a first-round pick swap that is top 3 protected in 2031. Now, it is not merely just for Tyler Herro. The Heat would give up Nikola Jovic to Detroit in this deal as well. And if the Heat did end up making this trade, that signifies you are fully resetting the roster around Bam Adebayo. That is where that would go for Miami, is that you got a bunch of picks, you get a couple, or you get one young guy in a veteran expiring contract, and you are now looking to use that draft capital to draft around Bam or trade for a player that might raise the ceiling of the Heat that is better than Tyler Herro and fits with next to Bam Adebayo. And these 2 players you'd be getting in return from Detroit, one of them is significantly more intriguing than the other, and I am referring to Ron Holland, the rookie who dissed Texas, went to go play for the G League Ignite program in its final year. He played 82 games last season, and he showed a lot of flashes. Not the most offensively polished player, but he's an athletic freak who showed the ability to get downhill and attack the cup, and provides a lot of interesting things for the future in terms of his ability on the Pistons or potentially with the Heat. Now, Tobias Harris is a veteran expiring $26 million contract that would be able to stopgap as a 3rd, 4th offensive option for you currently, or use this trade bait in the future, or just an expiring contract. And coming up in just a little bit, I'm going to give my thoughts on the trade, on if I would pull the trigger on this potential deal. But before I do that, I do want to showcase what Bleacher Report said on why it would make sense for the Heat to do this trade. Buckley referred to the maybe not, maybe extending Tyler Herro and Jovic, and Buckley said the wise move, if you're not going to extend them, is to cash in on the trade chips in hopes of hitting it in big later. This deal would offer multiple hopes for a jackpot prize. The draft picks, 2 out firsts, including an unprotected one in 2030, and a lightly protected pick swap, would be the most obvious scratch tickets, regardless if Miami spent the picks itself or uses them as additional trade fodder for an established star. And I mentioned it just a second ago when it comes to the trade. I don't disagree. You can make an argument for it being the right move for Miami. You can make an argument for it being a bad move for the Heat. But you can't disagree on acquiring an unprotected pick in 2030, a protected swap, which is only top 3, which you're probably not picking top 3 in Detroit then, assuming Cade Cunningham progresses the way we think. You're going to be able to choose your ability to get their pick or yours, plus a lottery protected first this year, which makes it probably likely you're going to get that because they'll probably be in the playoffs. Like, you're getting 3 potential first round picks, not only to trade, but to keep for yourself. And that is the quickest way that you restart this build, is by acquiring more draft capital to use in trades or just have in draft for yourself. And before I give my thoughts, and coming up in just one second, I do want to ask y'all this, though. Would you guys consider trading Tyler Herro? We've talked about this topic a couple times this offseason, but with how the offseason is concluded, basically, what are your thoughts? Let me know. Y for yes or N for no. I'll say this. If the Heat want to contend for a title sooner rather than later, you are going to need more bullets in the chamber. The Heat have some interesting young players. Kasper Siakachonis, Kalal Ware, Nikola Jovic. But they don't really have a ton of draft capital. They don't have any second-round picks. They only really have a couple tradable first-round picks. And yeah, they basically have their first-round picks for themselves going forward outside of 2027, but you don't have a lot that you can trade for a superstar. And my question is, when it comes to the Tyler Herro trade front, is there another leap for Tyler? Because if you do not believe that he can reach another pantheon or level of NBA hierarchy, then you should think about trading him, because you either got to extend him at 40+ mil per season or you got to move off of him. And I'll be honest, the Heat aren't going to win a championship with Tyler Herro as their leading scorer. I just don't see that being the case. Like, Tyler Herro, to me, has to be your number 2 offensively. He's your 3rd best player, number 2 offensively. That's how I view it. So, like, if you're asking me the perfect way for the Heat to win a title with Herro and Bam on the roster, well, you need that alpha dog. Whether it's a player like a Giannis, whether it's a player like an Anthony Edwards, like, I'm just naming these top 10, top 15 players that can command the ball in big moments, that command the top attention from opposing defenses, but also can give you 26 a night. That is the player that the Heat need, leading Herro and Bam, if they want to win a title with those 2 pillars on the team. But if you can't get that because you're paying Herro 40 mil and he's not taking that step to where he is a player regarded top 15 in the league, well, then there is a serious conversation to be had on if you should trade him. So you have to not only judge on what a contract extension looks like for Herro in Miami, but also make the assessment on if he can take that step to a top 15, a 3rd, an All-NBA level type of guy. More to come, but this episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, and I make decisions every day in the shows. I make decisions every day when I go to the grocery store. Well, on PrizePicks, you can make decisions that make you some cash. Don't miss any excitement this season, whether it's football or basketball, on PrizePicks, where it's good to be right. You can take more or less on Saquon Barkley rushing touchdowns, Joe Burrow passing touchdowns, Josh Allen passing yards. You just pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections. If you get your picks right, you could cash in. You could get in on the action in more than 40 states, including Texas, California, and Georgia. PrizePicks invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks does not hit. PrizePicks also offers specials where they discount player projections, more than half a passing yard for Dak Prescott is one of them for week 1 of professional football. I'm pairing that up with more than on Joe Flacco and more than Demario Douglas receiving yards and passing yards respectively to try to cash in on week 1. So join me, download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That is code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. Now, when you go back to that deal, and here's where I officially start giving my stance on that trade idea we've been talking about, I would be intrigued about potentially trading Herro to the Pistons for an abundance of picks and young players. But I am not including Nikola Jovic in that deal. So, quickly rehashing on what the Bleacher Report trade was. It was Ron Holland, Tobias Harris, a first-round pick in 26, 2030, and a pick swap in 2031 for Tyler Herro and Nikola Jovic. Here is Rolly's revised trade. Nothing changed for Miami, but instead I am giving up Jaime Jaquez instead of Nikola Jovic. And you can make the argument, well, you're probably not going to be able to get that then because Jovic is viewed as more of a long-term asset than Jaime Jaquez Jr. Well, that might be the case. But if I'm being convinced to trade Tyler Herro away for a player that is raw offensively, an expiring veteran who stinks, and just draft capital, I'm going to need to not give up Nikola Jovic as well. Like, I don't really think it should be a crazy idea at all that Heat fans should want to keep Nikola Jovic over a player like Jaime Jaquez Jr. And if you are taking in Ron Holland, even if you trade Jovic out, Holland is just going to take Jaquez's role on this roster. So it makes more sense to get rid of him. It would also help Detroit, in my opinion, a little bit more because he would fill that void that Holland left off the bench and also give you a little bit of a veteran win now, contribute kind of player rather than a Jovic who has to really find his way on a roster. And if you're Miami, well, to me, you clearly should keep Jovic, even though he's been in the league 1 year longer than Jaime. Jovic has shown more promise long-term. He was also more productive last season, despite being a couple of years younger. And I think Jovic fits better on this Heat roster because you have, obviously, in Miami, Pallel Larson on the rise, Kashad Johnson, Simone Fontecchio. And it's like, why would I want to keep on playing Jaime Jaquez Jr.? So, to me, I really don't think it's a decision whatsoever. If you could get the same package in return from Detroit, but you swap out Jovic and trade away Jaquez instead. Final word on today's show coming up in a second, but hit that sub button if you haven't already. You're still watching today's show, and I appreciate that. But if you want daily Heat content, subscribe to the channel today. We're family here at the Heat Report, so hopefully we add a couple more. All right, final thoughts on this trade here. I would absolutely be willing to trade Tyler Herro and Jaime Jaquez Jr. for that package. I really, really am. Because I do not think the Heat can contend for a title in the next 2 years unless Ware or Jovic take an all-star leap, which that could absolutely happen. I'm not saying it's out of the realm of possibility, but I don't think Herro, per our conversation earlier in the show, can take that next step forward as an all-NBA guy. And I would be willing to cash in on him plus another guy on a rookie deal for a full reset in terms of roster construction as well as draft capital. Because we have talked about acquiring a superstar for a long time. Whether it's Giannis, whether it's a Donovan Mitchell, a De'Aaron Fox, it doesn't matter. Like, these guys that we want, you need to have more picks to trade for them. That's always been how the Heat have fallen just a bit short. You now get back those draft picks. You have 5 tradable first-round picks. Now when a player like Giannis comes available, a player like Anthony Edwards maybe comes available in the next 4 years, you have young players in Ware and Jovic or Ron Holland, plus 5 first-round picks to offer. That is how you finally land that guy in Miami. And you're never going to be able to do that unless you're willing to trade Tyler Herro and that team covets him, or you trade Herro to get the draft capital. So to me, if you are building for the future and trying to win a title in the next decade, that is the easiest way to do that. Because I don't think you're getting there with Herro and Bam leading your team. I just feel very strong about that. That'll do it for today's episode. If you want more on the Miami Heat, follow me over on Twitter at Nick_Roloff, talking more Heat basketball on the daily over there, and we'll see you tomorrow with another video. Go Heat.